Hello.
Hello. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good, thank God. How are you?
Great. Thanks. Baruch
Uh,
Hashem.
Somebody just asked what the topic of the day is.
If you're asking me, I'm kind of open-minded. Whatever comes my way, I'll just speak my truth. But ultimately, I thought would be beneficial. And what I mentioned to you at some point is that I share a lot about my journey now, and I share a lot about my story. And there's a video out there about what I share about my story. And I could talk about what happens after you share your story publicly. I thought that could be very powerful. I know it's a hot topic. Just wanted to make sure from the people who are watching, is the video good? Because last time I was having trouble with that. People said I was on like halfway up. My face was cut off. Sometimes it was too far, too close.
It looks good to me.
Okay, so I'd love if anybody can just let us know.
Yeah, so just to answer the person that asked, so Coach Moishe, we're big fans. Sean and I are like huge fans of Coach Moishe, and we've been planning this one for a while, and we're so honored that we get to be celebrating with you tonight. A big milestone that's extremely special.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
I could tell you what I'm feeling. I mean, it's definitely significant. 7 years ago today, I had no idea how much my life was going to change. And I didn't know that there was hope for me. I didn't know, there was a lot I didn't know. I was in a lot of pain, and I was going through the pain, emotional pain, internal pain, just alone, without any help, without knowing how or why or how to get out, or that I'm not the only one. Apparently there are millions of people out there that feel just like me. But that took me some time, but
how long were you suffering for before you?
I guess it depends in what context. In certain areas I was thriving, even at the end. But I would say emotionally, I was in pain for a long time. Sometimes I would, for the most part, I would numb it. And other times I just, ignored it, kept going, or was actually happy. It was okay.
So how did you know that it was time to get help?
Because once I caught myself, I noticed myself expressing how I did not want to live, and I was actually observing myself doing this. It was crazy, actually, that I vaguely remember it, but certain things about it are pretty clear. That last night that I was drinking, and on one hand, I had drunk a whole day, but on the other hand, I was just like totally sober. I was totally straight and totally functional. And so on one hand, I'm doing things that I'm acting in ways that are so shameful, or let's say a part of me is being so totally justified and just expressing myself, and then the other part of me is observing me and saying like, whoa, dude, what's wrong with you? You're so shameful. Go show your kids how shameful you are. What you're doing and what you're expressing and what you're saying to my wife at the time in front of my kids was just so shameful. Now that the rage is done, or whatever it is that I was acting out was done, let me turn around to my kids and show them how shameful I am. So at that point, I remember at a certain point I had like a glass of water in my hand, and my expression of how shameful it was to pour the glass of water over my head in front of my kids. So I knew from this other entity that was watching me doing things that something was really, really wrong. I also, while I was doing that, I didn't know I was going to get help that night. I was just, it was just chaos. And then at a certain point, the Hatzalah member showed up because my wife and her sister, Simi, I think Shua was there. Yeah, Shua was there also. My brother-in-law, and they said, call Hatzalah, let's call Hatzalah. And they showed up, and with 3 of my brothers, we sat down. I don't remember when they showed up or how the sequence of events happened, but I know I was sitting down with them in a circle on my porch and just basically saying, I don't know why, I have no reason to live. I'm a burden on my family. I'll be doing them a favor by relieving them of the burden of my existence because I'm so shameful. And these people were just sitting there across from me saying, what? How? Moish, we look up to you. You have so much to live for. Your kids love you. Your wife loves you. They adore you, you know. You give us so much, one of my little brothers said. And I just couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. And at a certain point, that's all I remember. I don't remember what he said, but he had said basically, okay, you're not safe. You know, you should come with me to a safe place. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I knew that I was going somewhere. And I also, like, at the same time, I was also observing myself again at that moment saying, if I don't go right now, quickly, not even get fully dressed, just dash towards his car and jump in. If I don't do that, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to tell myself, let me just sleep this off and everything will be fine. And part of me wanted to do that. You know, let me just sleep off this night. Tomorrow I'll start working on things. Maybe I'll go to a therapist. Maybe I'll go to outpatient. So I attribute that to God, literally. I don't know why I just did it. I just went ahead. I jumped into the car, not knowing where I'm going, and just packing literally no socks, Crocs, a sweater, no shirt, and just jumped into the Hatzelah's member's personal vehicle. And he took me to the psych ward where, while I was there, I started detoxing and started getting, you know, I share a lot of those details of the story online, but I knew I had an issue. When I got to the psych ward, I was like, oh, one second. What's such a nice guy like me doing in a place like this, you know? And
it's full of nice guys like you.
Yeah. It was not a pleasant experience, but parts of it were life-saving and so good. So, you know, once I got to rehab, which was after the psych ward, I was there for 7 days, that's when I started learning about the disease, and I started learning about addiction, and, you know, we're not bad people, we're just sick.
So for those who don't know, could you just give a brief, I mean, obviously it's probably very complex, but so aside from the addiction issues, what were they dealing with in the psych ward?
Oh, so that was officially for suicide watch.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. And they had diagnosed me with depression. They put me on antidepressants at that time, which once I was in rehab, I basically stopped taking the pills then. I haven't needed it since then. I was in a safe environment to explore not taking antidepressants. I was in a safe place that I could share what's on my mind, and thank God, it's been okay.
Wow.
That's what's up. That was the beginning.
That's the beginning. But were you having those thoughts for a long time and then just kind of gradually numbing, or you kind of started numbing and then felt terrible about it?
Yeah, I mean, from like there's numbing is like I use that for many different reasons, but ultimately, yeah, numbing for a long time, and then that one night was the only time that I ever expressed anything about wanting to kill myself. So
it says hi.
Hi, Ellie. I'm following your footsteps, Ellie.
He's awesome.
I know. We go way back. We go way back. Yeshiva days.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, we were in first grade together. Maybe even pre-1A.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, power team.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it bigger.
So, wow. Okay, so you started numbing, and then the suicidal thoughts did not happen until you felt shame.
Yeah, I mean, it was ultimately what I really attribute it to is the numbing just not working anymore. that one day I had run out of weed, and I was only drinking, because I would drink and I would smoke weed every day for a long time. And that day I had run out of weed, so I had to compensate with drinking more, and it was Simchas Torah, so it was justified from the morning through the whole day. And I guess, like I said earlier, I was just still totally sober, still feeling all my feelings. The shame was definitely what was the last straw on the camel's back. Yeah.
Wow. And then, so I know we talked about this a long time ago, but I found it very powerful. You told me that there was always, usually there's somebody who will have a story where they started drinking because of whatever, but you said that wasn't your story, right?
Yeah, not that I know of. No, I mean, I'm still learning my story, because there's a lot of things that till today I'm still learning were significant moments, like how I was introduced into sexuality, and it wasn't a healthy way. And being, I don't know, just not having an adult in my life that I felt comfortable to approach with things that bother me, that are embarrassing. Who was I talking to? I was just talking to somebody today, and he was just describing to me how somebody in his life was somebody that he was able to approach and say, hey, there's something bothering me, I have this issue, can you tell me what to do? And that person in his life was able to guide them, and that literally was a lifesaver for him. So yeah, not having somebody like that is a big deal.
Mm-hmm. It's huge for teenagers.
For adults too.
Wow. There was a lot of questions, and they're all really good ones. So I don't want to miss them. So I feel like I put them in order so that we kind of flow.
Cool.
But I want to try to stick with them so that we don't run out of time.
Okay.
We covered the first little bit. What was your treatment like when you went to the treatment when you were in the ward, and then afterwards, what kind of supports were successful? Was there trial and error?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So just real quick, when I was in the psych ward, it was a lockdown psych ward. I was a cigarette smoker, and I wasn't able to smoke. So I was detoxing off alcohol and weed, and I couldn't smoke any cigarettes. So that was really stressful. So I had to find some way to let out anxiety, which I didn't even know what anxiety was. 27 years old. I don't even know what anxiety is. Anyway, so I'm feeling all these this anxiousness. So what I did was I just started doing push-ups, and that would really relieve things. And any self-pity I would relieve by finding somebody that I could be of service to, without even understanding what I was doing. These are just, I guess, just what happened, So intuition, I guess. Yeah. I try to be a good patient, not get into any trouble, do what they say, and things definitely were questionable. I was definitely resentful at the certain staff members there, which I thought really disrespected me. But ultimately, I got through it, and it introduced me to rehab. And rehab was a 30-day program. Most people who go to this program end up being advised to stay for another 2 months at least. Again, I attribute it to two things. Number one is I was ready. I jumped in. I had no reservations. I just shared everything. I just opened up. And that experience was so liberating so liberating to be able to be in an environment 24/7 with people who understand me. Like that is, like, I can't describe that with words. Like today, I look back at that and like, I would love to go back to rehab and spend another 30 days or even a couple of days. It's such an environment. It's so awesome.
Do they let volunteers come in?
They do on Sundays, but it's like a 3.5-hour drive. I've done it twice since I got sober, but I haven't done it in a while. I would love to go back there.
It's a nice thing to do. That 3 hours is far for
3.5 hours. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's in Pennsylvania, near Reading, Pennsylvania. Yeah, so it's like taking out a whole Sunday. Really.
And then did it follow a very, like, obviously it's not simple path, but did it follow like a generic path, or were there kind of, did it take time to figure out what worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. For me, I was just listening to whatever I was being told. I don't know why, and
You don't seem to be that kind of person.
I thank God. I really, really thank God for just being willing to do the work. And you know, before I had left, I have to give credit where due. You know, before I had left rehab, I already had my rabbi Chaim Fogelman. He's the rabbi of the shul I'm at, and he came to visit me at the rehab to get a little bit of education of what addiction is, so that he can be of support to me. He also he set up so that the first Shabbos when I come back out of rehab, there's going to be no booze in shul. A lot of people didn't like that, but that's something he did.
Wow.
So I had a rabbi.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, I had, absolutely, especially in our shul. Trust me, we had a lot of drinking back then.
Of course.
So you had a rabbi, and the shul community was supporting me. I had friends that had come visit me, and they were supportive. I had family that had paid for my rehab and were my accountability for when I get back. I had an outpatient that I was already checked in with for me to go to as soon as I come out of rehab, which I did. I just literally drove straight there. I had a wife that was supportive. I had, you know, it was even, by the time I came home from rehab, I already had connected with like the sober community in Crown Heights. So I had such a massive support system that I'm like, this is the best thing in the world. I'm just totally in. And that's also why the rehab said, look, 30 days, you're good. Just go. Yeah, so everything really worked, really. I went to the outpatient, going to therapy 3 times a week, personal therapy, and then there was like a relapse prevention, and then there was like a process group where we get really deep. And then we also did couples therapy, and my wife also did her own personal therapy, and she had group therapy. You know, so doing all these things, being part of a support group, a therapeutic support group, being part of a group of people who are staying sober in my community, who I can, on a Shabbos, I know their address, I can knock on their door and say, hey, I'm struggling. Or there are some guys who are not religious, they know they'll keep their phone on if somebody's really struggling, because we know it's a matter of life and death. We'll make a phone call and somebody's going to pick up. You know? So just having that itself is just like, I'm not turning back. And it's amazing. And then it goes...
Will stay...
sober? No, not at all. No, but
just like one token solidarity Shabbos.
Yeah, and it was very nice. I actually, I really felt like I felt bad for the guys who really wanted to drink. I didn't think it was necessary, but it was a real statement, and I appreciated the thoughtfulness and the willingness that this entire community of, at the time we were like at least 60 guys, 70 guys, families, and probably more. You know, but these are like good, let's say 50 guys that they come to show and they want to drink on Shabbos. And our show, we used to, you know, have l'chaim before Shabbos, and then some guys would go during davening, and some guys would go, you know, which I just want to be clear, like, I'm not against any of this stuff, but we can get into that later. So having such a support system, I think the last thing I wanted to say is like it really quickly came to the point in time where I was so supported that I was able to be of support to others. And that's really, really where things are like, I'm not turning back from this. This is too good. There's too much self-worth, self-esteem, usefulness, and meaning and purpose that happens as a result of this.
That's like so beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've heard such a powerful story. Like I know I've heard lots of stories where people struggle and they don't have support, or they struggle and everybody else wants the support around them, but they don't really want it for themselves. So it's so special that it was, seems like everything fell into place.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so fortunate.
That's really beautiful. So what kind of, this seems like a broad question. Maybe you could narrow it down, but
okay.
But what would you say to the people where things don't line up this well for them? And like if they don't have the same support system, the family, the community, if their buddies are like, oh, so you don't have a drinking problem, like,
right.
Let's have a look, I am,
I'll tell you what, let's go worst case scenario, okay? So it's a family that doesn't have money, can't pay for rehab. They don't even have insurance, so they can't even get insurance to cover it. They can't pay for a therapist. You can't, let's say you don't have anything, right? At the bare minimum, there are 12-step programs. You don't have to pay for anything. You could just show up. All you need, as I said, like a desire to stop drinking, a desire to stop using, a desire. That's all you need, and you just show up. So that's number one. Number two is today, there's already like an Amudim, OHEL, even like a JCW that, if for somebody who's a survivor of sexual abuse, they'll be able to get you like funding from ASAP. Even if you don't have any of these things, there are options, even if you literally have nothing. So when there's something that happens as a result of connecting with other people who understand you, not just understand your story, but understand your internal story, your internal experience of how you experience life and how you experience the world and how you relate to the world and to God and to yourself. If somebody gets you inside out from like all those different levels, it's literally half the cure, and that's for free.
Wow.
And
Benny Schoenfeld, when we interviewed him, he was awesome also.
Yeah.
So he was the first person that I ever heard say, and I've heard it a few times since, but he's the first person that I ever heard say that the opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh yeah. The opposite of everything is kind of. I'm all for connection. It's just I can go on for hours about connection and attachment and absolutely.
And it sounds like you really had a lot, and that's probably why you were so successful, and why you were able to, be sober for 7 years strong.
Back in the day, it probably would have been, he went to rehab. I don't want him working for me. Or he went to rehab. He has a drug problem. We don't want him in our community. We don't want him in our shul. He's going to corrupt our kids, and he's going to, on the contrary, that I'm embraced and I'm supported. Yeah, that's what happens.
Because you're the that post the fire the person who's carrying water after you've left, carrying water for others after you left the fire. I'm messing up that post.
I don't even remember what you're talking about. Forgive me.
The firefighter who puts out the fire and then comes back and carries water to help put out the fire for the rest of them.
I don't even remember. Forgive me.
Whatever. I just messed that up. Somebody just asked, what about someone who doesn't his or her own motivation to change? Doesn't have their own motivation to change. How could you help them help themselves?
Okay, I mean that's opening up a whole separate question, but
But that
I,
is on our list.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can speak to this answer from a like professional perspective, and then just from my personal experience. And I guess I'm gonna choose to just go from my personal experience. I've talked to literally hundreds of people. Yeah, hundreds of people who come to me and they say either they're seeing a therapist and the therapist doesn't get them, and they start talking about it and they realize that they're an addict and they're using or drinking, or hey, I only have a problem with alcohol. I don't see a problem with weed, or I only have a problem with weed, but I don't have a problem with alcohol, or I only have a problem with opiates, but I don't have a problem with weed. And as long as they don't have that willingness to do whatever it takes and sacrifice everything, it's really difficult to get them to do the things that are so. I can't get them to do the things that are so difficult. It's really, really difficult. Like, who wants to admit defeat? Who wants to let go of the only thing that's keeping me alive? Literally, alcohol, drugs, and and any type of behavior that is helping somebody numb out. It's numbing pain. And when they see, and when I saw the idea of living with the pain, I was like, no, I can't live. Period. I can't live like this. So how can I get somebody else? Like, in my experience, I have a very open door, and I say, look, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, can you get me sober? I'll right away say, hey, look, I'm happy to work with you. I'll meet you on your terms and I'll work with you and we'll go ahead, and if it works, great. But I want to share with you that from my experience and from what I've seen, the most successful avenue to go through would be to be completely abstinent and go to like the 12-step program and do it that way, but to try to hold on to certain bad behaviors and old things, it's just like the one thing that's, how to say, we're only as sick as our secrets. We're hanging on to, a ship that's going down the thing. We're like trying to be saved, but we're being pulled down from another direction. So as long as we're not ready to face the music, face the pain that is going to show up when we stop using, and we're ready to do whatever it takes, it's very difficult, and unfortunately, usually pain is the greatest motivator, and you'll hear this a lot, or you have to hit bottom, and what is bottom? That's a whole different conversation, but ultimately, bottom is when you're just willing to do whatever it takes. You could still have 2 cars in your garage and a beautiful house and a good marriage and everything's good, but you're willing to do whatever it takes. And when you're willing to do whatever it takes, all of a sudden your whole life starts being built up over again. And it's beautiful. So how do I get somebody? The best thing you can do for somebody who's not ready and not willing is to tell them that I'm here for you, and whenever you're ready and whenever you're willing, the option is here. I'm not, there's 2 schools of thoughts when it comes to this. One is going to say, oh, don't enable them, kick them out of the house, cut them off. But if the opposite of a disease is connection, cutting them off is killing them. So, wow. That being said, it's good to love them, and if they're in danger to, God forbid, it's a parent and the spouse sees a parent and they're endangering the kids, yeah, that's a different story. I'm not going to give you advice right now. I strongly recommend that you speak to a professional because that's complex. But if you love them, always love them. Always love them, and say, whenever you're ready, I'm here for you, because you're starting to give them the medicine of connection. You're giving them the medicine of attachment.
Wow. We're behind on questions now. Hold on. Okay, Rachel Herkin asked, many addicts feel like they can't be open about their addiction in the frum world.
Yeah.
How do we challenge that, besides for this super brave open chair?
I think it's all about, what I've seen is successful is by allowing the conversation to happen. So even if you don't have an addict in the family, you can, or let's say in the school, you just education. You know, I'm part of Neshamas, and our mission is prevention. And the way that we do prevention is through education, just like what you guys are doing. It's all about education. And the more we know, the more we're educated, and we know how to act about it. And the more we talk about it, the less stigma there is. The less stigma, the more people are willing to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just put it in a nutshell. Yeah, just talk about it. You know, at a certain point, my daughter, we were driving and said, I think she said, do you do weed or something like that? I don't remember exactly what she asked me. I said, no, I don't. And she said, what is it? Why do people do it? And I just talked to her about it. And she's 10. Mm-hmm. And if my kid is asking me about it, if your kid is asking about it, they know about it already. Mm-hmm. 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds today know about it. There's no, you can't shelter them from that. You just need to educate them. You're empowering them to make the right choice.
Absolutely. That's so important, that for sure that for kids to feel like you're not judging them when they come with difficult questions.
Yeah.
I think
if a parent goes around saying, "Oh, that guy's a drug addict. Don't look at him. Don't talk to him," or drinking is shameful. If we do that, and the kid is doing it secretly by themselves, or does it 2, 3, 4, 5 years later by themselves, they're going to be ashamed to come to you and tell you anything. Mm-hmm. So it's important to say, oh, there's something called addiction, and it's a disease, and it's an illness. It's really a mental illness. And we have to feel bad for people like this. We have to daven for them. We have to have compassion and love and embrace them. Of course, there's the other side where, God forbid, there's an actual threat. That's a different story. I'm talking about when the person is not a threat to other people. God forbid, violence.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important point too, and that kind of ties into, you know, the way that we talk at our Shabbos table, and, you know, or the way that we kind of talk to our kids in general, the way that they hear us speak about other people.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to somebody who is a dietitian about, you know, shaming in that way. Like, are we shaming? We have to be careful about shaming about anything, because everybody's going through something. So whether it's an addiction, whether it's a different mental illness, whether it's weight shame, stigma, whether you know, there's so many things that people are suffering with. Yeah. And if our children hear us speak with judgment about it, then they will feel embarrassed to speak to us about it. Exactly. Because they won't want to talk. They won't want to be judged.
100%. Yeah, and it's not just addiction; it's all the other things as well. Everything.
And like also curiosity about normal human function is really important. You know, like we spoke with Eli Nash when he was talking about his pornography addiction. You know, when kids have questions about that, to respond without judgment. You know, this is what they, you know, this is what's out there, and if there's shame connected to that, you know, I'm pretty sure that, like, I'm gonna say this, oh my gosh, I'm being recorded, but like over 90% of guys in yeshiva today have been exposed to that stuff. Okay? And if it's shameful, then they're going to live for the rest of their life, or until there comes a day where they actually feel comfortable to talk about it and, hey, you know what, something's wrong with me. You know, I love what Shimon Russell talks about. I strongly recommend, if anybody has time, YouTube Shimon Russell on these subjects. There's quite a few videos on him, and he talks about the experience of somebody who, God forbid, was sexually abused or was even exposed to sexuality pre-puberty. It doesn't even have to be that somebody actually abused them, but they were exposed to it pre-puberty. They are going to connect that with shame. Anything that has to do with sex is shameful. And therefore, I'm going into my yeshiva, and the Rebbe is talking about it, and when they talk about
sneas and all these types of things. They're like, this is a terrible thing. And every time that's brought up, this person is just internalizing more and more and more shame, and they're closing up more and more and more, which means this person is living in isolation. There's a part of me that's shameful, and all of a sudden one day they identify with the shame. I am a shameful person. And it's painful to live and feel like I'm shameful. It really does.
And then when they get married and they have those exact same feelings that they had when they were exposed to that shameful experience, but all of a sudden it's not shameful.
Yeah.
But they have that.
They still feel
feeling,
the shame. 100%. Yeah.
Then you have, could possibly have some sexual dysfunction in a marriage.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's really important to be aware of that as well and get help. I think we have actually, I think 2 lives coming up about sexual dysfunction and shame based in that. So it's really important. So thank you so much for bringing that up about just kind of talking without judgment, and it's a really important point.
Yeah, Mayor Kay did this whole thing on Rosh Hashanah right now, and like people don't realize it's not just about the Avera of Rosh Hashanah. You're going to see the consequences in your own home if we're not talking in a respectful manner. Mm-hmm. About people who have illnesses.
But like literally if 1 in 4 people suffer with mental illness at some point in their life, then you either already are very close with someone who does, or
and if you're in a Jewish family, you have like 2 or 3 people in your family. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's true. It's true. That's why there's no point in judging. There's no point. That's why we have to keep talking about it, because there's no point in the shame and stigma, because if everyone's going through something, then why are you judging other people? Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so we have more questions. So Eli Nash says, in other recovery programs, there's the idea of cutting out our worst behaviors first and then work progressively on the others. Is there the equivalent of that when recovering from drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, when the first thing was, let's cut out the things that are life-threatening, the things that are completely debilitating. So let's say, for example, by me, you were allowed to smoke cigarettes in rehab, So they know that if people are told you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes in a rehab, they're just not going to show up to that rehab, period. If you're asking for too much, you're just not going to get anything. So yes, I said earlier that, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. So I guess there's a balance. So I guess I could retract that and say there's a balance. You don't have to cut out everything all at once. So I'm going to agree with Eli on that.
Okay.
I ended up actually, thank God, I quit smoking also. It's about 3.5 years. Quit smoking. But I wasn't ready. In the beginning, I was smoking like a chimney. And then at a certain point, one day, I had no idea it was going to be that day either. And I got some help. I read the Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking book. I had a friend do some hypnotherapy, which we did just 2 sessions, and that's it. It wasn't just the quitting; it was the keeping on, staying quit. Whatever. There's more to that story, but.
Wow. I'd like to hear what you do instead now. Like, what are your vices?
Food is still out there.
Oh yeah, sourdough.
Sourdough, yeah. I'll tell you what, the biggest thing for me, I'll tell you that helped me with my cigarette smoking, was wanting a cigarette and then saying, wow. Not even saying wow. I would just say, thank God I don't have to have that cigarette right now. And just like slowly say it and internalize it. And just doing that literally a whole bunch of times a day in the beginning, and then eventually, like, I just don't want a cigarette. I don't mind the smell of cigarettes. I enjoy the smell of cigarettes. I just don't smoke. That's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, I would say the biggest vice I have today is just feeling useful and being of service. I know that sounds a little bit like, lofty or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's really what works.
No, I mean,
Connection.
makes sense.
Connection. Yes.
Yeah. Mendy says, hearing your success story is much more powerful to motivate someone to get help than preaching to them. Thanks for sharing.
1,000% amen. 1,000 times amen. 100%. Because as soon as you preach, there's defenses. That's it. It's just the way it is.
Oh, so there's a few questions on the private questions. 1 second.
Mic drop.
Oh, actually, both of the questions are on our list. So I'm going to hold off on them because they're later on. And let me just look through. Okay, so could you talk about, I know it's kind of, I mean, I would love to hear from your wife how she felt, but if you could kind of speak for her a little bit, and kind of what she went through briefly, and
yeah,
we could watch her. Did she do a mic drop?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She did a mic drop. But
yeah.
I mean, that's part of her story. It's a huge part of her story, but she definitely has a lot more to share. Somebody had asked me this comment, and I was like a little taken aback, but it's a misconception, and I should clear it up. I think it's probably on your list. Your wife must have been so strong to stick by your side throughout all that time. And let me add, through today, because I still struggle. I still have my days. I still have my weeks. And it's really difficult. So to say that she was so strong, I think is missing the point. I think the greatest courage that she had and the strength that she had was the day that she was willing to go see a therapist without me and take care of herself and help herself function and help herself be mentally strong. That takes courage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the courage was maybe when I came back from rehab and she allowed me back in once I was already with help. So to stick by my side while I'm acting out, I think the strength is not necessarily there. I think the strength is really in being willing to ask for help. And I say that all the time just because I believe in it so much.
It's amazing. Someone says, thank you so much for this. I have even more respect for you and your journey the more you speak. Thanks for being a voice for so many. Kamar Fasima Tova.
Thank you.
And someone else said, Moshe, you are doing so great and have so much to be proud of.
Thanks, Milo.
The Ice Life says, healing is often so much harder than the actual struggle itself.
Yeah. I thought about something this day. Yeah, it's the known and the unknown, right? So even if the known pain is so great, if the unknown recovery is unknown, we'll be quicker as humans, because that's just the way our brains work, we'll be quicker to stay in the pain because it's familiar. It's a certain wiring, a certain way I guess our brain is made where for survival is that familiarity is equals safety. You know, so 100%. There's so much more courage in being willing to ask for help and to lean into the healing, even though we don't know what it's going to be like.
And it makes sense on a physiological level also, because if you think about if the brain is another organ, the brain is another part of the body, right? So like when you're working out any other part of your body, you need to tear it down before, and then usually, you know, if you've done like a really strong workout, like for the next few days after, you're going to be suffering way more than you were suffering when you were actually lifting the weights themselves, because the hair is actually what builds the muscle. It's not the tear.
Interesting. Down. Yeah, interesting. I never actually saw it that way, but yeah.
I was talking to a brain researcher actually last Shabbos, and she was telling me that we really have to that she was really excited about Project Proactive because she really thinks it's important for people to understand that the brain is really any other part of the body, that when it's not well, that you fix it, and there shouldn't be a differentiation because people see it and it's a little bit different. Like, people see how you behave differently, whereas like if you have an issue with your bladder, they wouldn't really necessarily see it.
Right.
But she said it's really important that people understand that
Yeah.
they're. Somebody else said, are there any programs that mental health practitioners can volunteer at in the firm community?
That's a good question. If there was one place, I would recommend going into schools and speaking to students, being a non-judgmental, non-employee of the school, that they can approach you and say, and there's going to be no consequences. They're going to be able to share with you anything that's on their mind, and you won't judge them or kick them out or tell the school faculty. I think that's probably the biggest thing, or maybe even doing after-school programs for students.
Mm-hmm. That is really important. Rachel Herkman actually has one of the questions that we have on our list, but it could be a good time for it. What do you wish you could tell your pre-recovered self? Yeah,
I mean, it's very easy to answer this because of all the mic drop stuff that they put out there. Because Eli Nash, basically, we mentioned Eli Nash a lot in here, but he talks a lot about, what's your passion? And your passion basically comes from like something that you needed and you didn't have. And that's why you're so passionate, and you want to give it to others so that they don't have to experience the same thing. And the message and my passion are basically the same thing. People need people. And I said it earlier, we need people. We need a safe place in this world. We need somebody on this earth that loves us unconditionally, even just one person. We need a home, which is like really a home, which is a place where unconditionally accepted. I think I talk about that a lot. We need
connection.
Yeah, but really, like, what's behind that? I know at a certain point I put up a story. I wanted to ask like a vote, what should I talk about? And I got all these different responses. And one of the subjects I wanted to talk about was, this pyramid of like connection, parents, God, and like addiction, and like what's the connection with all of them, and what's like the pyramid, So basically, ultimately, like what happens as a result of connection? Happens as a result of somebody loving me unconditionally, accepting me unconditionally, or even just knowing that there's a place for me in this world? Is I matter. I am important. I am valued here on earth. There's something for me to contribute. That's what happens as a result of connection, really. I'm okay here. I'm valued. I matter. And that's why a lot of the work I'm doing right now is my own personal work, because I want to get to this place where I don't do all these good things in order to fulfill like an intense neediness to matter, or to feel like I'm okay, or I'm worthy, or I'm worth something. So I have to, the place that I'm trying to get it from is literally from my neshama, from God. Waking up in the morning, that means God says I matter. Starting from there. And that when I say Maidani, I take a moment and I say, wow, God just woke me up this morning. He believes I matter. There's something that I need to do today. God, please come with me throughout the day so that I can, bring it on.
What would you tell somebody if they really felt that they didn't matter?
That's such a good question. That's a really good question, because I believe, almost everybody I know does certain things to compensate for that belief, that part of them They believe at a certain extent that they don't matter, or they don't feel like they fully matter. And literally, oh my gosh, it's literally at the core of everything. So where do I start from? The best place to start from is from that belief. Me being born is God saying I matter. Oh, what if you don't believe in God? Well, that's a good question. There's something keeping me breathing. There's some sort of force that is keeping me breathing. So let's just call it that force. But there's some sort of force or energy or something that believes that I should be here and I should wake up. You know, and there are many people out there who go to sleep every night and say, God, please just take me. I don't want to wake up. And every morning they wake up, and I hear this a lot. Every morning they wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, another day? I have to live another day in this pain. The opposite of it would be like, oh wow, I matter. There's something. It's a switch that through exercise, a lot of exercise, or therapy, or a lot of that work, that could eventually come out. But a good place to start is from that belief and that exercise of the way it works for me is I literally put my hands together and I say, God, the emunah means your, one of the explanations is your belief in me. You believe that there's something that I have to accomplish today. Thank you, God. You know, and let me take this energy throughout the day as much as possible. Almost always I'll forget about that, and I'll have to remind myself. But it's something I'm working on daily, today, 7 years later.
I think that's really important because, you know, but the Brene Brown talks about the feeling of never enough, and I think that's really prevalent in general. But I feel like I really had to like reframe God in my mind as well, as far as his expectations of me, and I, you know, somebody once, you know, they were joking around with me, but you know, they made a comment to me like, oh, is that, you know, like, why would you even do that? Like, there's so many other things you could do to burn in hell or something like that, like that are more fun, or I don't know, something like stupid like that. But I just like, I turned to the guy and I was like, I don't believe in that God. Like, I don't believe in a God that like, I believe in a God that thinks I'm enough.
Right.
That, you know, that if I was better than I was a year ago, then I'm enough. If I'm better than I was, like, if I wasn't feeling it today, and I, you know, and I still got up and I, you know, and I did what I had to do today, then I'm enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the God I believe in. I don't believe in a God that, like, you know, if I go to Yom Kippur and I can't concentrate all day long, and I have to sit down because Shemona Esrei is like 5 hours long, and I have to like sit down in the middle, that like God's gonna be like mad at me, and like, you know, I'm gonna have to suffer for that. Like, I don't believe that God feels that.
Right.
So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, I don't think I am.
It's keeping you from.
It's keeping me from. I don't think I know that other people that I know kind of grappled with emunah. That's not one of my particular challenges, but I did have to reframe God in my mind in order to make sure that my kids don't grow up in a world where they feel like they're never enough for God.
Yeah, 100%. That's a huge part of my story, 100%.
So hold on, I'm just scrolling back to see if there's more. The honest self, he said, how far does pushing yourself to face your fears go when you suffer from severe anxieties and fears?
One of the biggest things, another one of the huge things that I'm working on today is I didn't realize how intense it is, but I'm like a fixer it type of guy, you know. So I'm sitting with a guy in show, and this is how it came up. Okay, so I'm going to give you the whole story. I have 4 minutes. Let me try to say it as quick as I can. Okay, so somebody asked me this question privately, saying, on one hand, we see that people say, or rabbis say, try to make the best out of Yom Kippur, out of Rosh Hashanah. This is the time to ask for everything you need. And if you don't, you're not going to take advantage of it and you're going to miss out on it. And then the other hand, we hear somebody like myself and others say, like, God loves you no matter what. And he's always there for you, whatever you need, no matter what, right? So I had an answer to that question, but I wanted to see what, at Shul, I was sitting around a couple of very wise people, and I wanted to see what they had to say. So I asked the question, and when I got the answer, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting these answers from very, very wise people, but I feel like they don't get it. They haven't experienced what it means to be in a place to ask a question like that. That's really cute. It's my son. So I got a great answer, and the answer was there are 3 levels, and one of them is make the best of it, and the other one is like a Pesach Sheni type of thing. So if you missed out, you can always catch up on it. And the third one is that God loves you no matter what. The problem is that there are certain people that, the way I like to compare it to is that, there's no atheist in a foxhole. But there are some people who just live in a foxhole all the time. And they have to believe in a God that loves them no matter what. They can't afford. Because if they do, they lose their last bit of hope. If they lose that last bit of hope and they're getting caught off from their community or from God, that's the last string they're holding on to, then I have no hope. And there's nothing for me to hold on to anymore. So somebody said a story, okay? This is the guy, basically, I was talking about me being there and post Mr. Fix-It. So basically, I wanted to, after this guy told me the story, which I'm going to say now, I told him he has to open up a Chabad house in Crown Heights. Anyway, because all these Chabad houses are like, yeah, everybody's welcome and God loves you no matter what you look like, but we need that stuff here. He said, I'll say this as quick as possible. So the Baal Shem Tov had a certain person that would come to him. He was the local thief. And any time he would do a robbery, he would come running to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov would give him a blessing, and he would get away with it, right? Time and time again, until one time they found out that this big government official is going to be coming through the town. He's going to have a lot of money, and they did this whole plan. They did a heist, and he's running away from them, and he comes and he finds out the Baal Shem Tov had passed away. So he's freaking out, doesn't know what to do. He goes to the next person, the holiest person there, and he tells them, look, I would always go to the Baal Shem Tov, and they would tell me what to do, and he would give me a blessing, and everything would work out. So he goes to this person, he tells him all that, and then this guy says, what? You're a thief? You just stole, and you want me to give you a blessing that you should get away? That's crazy. Get out of here, right? So he's really broken, and he decides he's going to go to where the Baal Shem Tov had just been buried. He goes to the caver, and he's sitting there, and he's crying, and he's letting out his sadness and his sorrow, and he's telling the Baal Shem Tov, you were the only person that I had. I don't need a Rebbe for the righteous people. You were the go-to person for the thieves. And now I don't have anybody. Now we don't have anybody. Right? So eventually the Baal Shem Tov came to him in a dream. He was crying, he fell asleep, and then the Baal Shem Tov came to him in a dream and told him to go to his grandson, and he ended up getting the blessing and got away with it. But the point of the story goes like this. We need a outlet for the thieves. There are certain people who need desperately, like their life depends on this belief that God loves me no matter what. If I don't, then I'm going to either shame myself, beat myself up, feel cut off, and no, I don't have the connection. And the one connection that I need more than anything is a real unconditional connection, which is with God.
Do you think everybody needs that?
Today, 100%. Today we need it all the time. We're like, I believe that today we're all kind of, that's why I was saying earlier, like every one of us in a certain sense struggles with the I matter thing, or needs that unconditional love from somebody. Yeah, we need that. So today I believe, or anybody who has any type of mental illness, which so many of us do, you know, there's so much trauma everywhere. And like, yeah, we need to have that belief that God loves us no matter what. And based on that, we could start having that as a foundation to start building up on other things. And that was my experience. I had to believe that God loves me no matter what and accepts me no matter what. And I was in an environment of people who accepted me no matter what. Then based on that, I slowly started doing mitzvahs one at a time, very meaningfully. I put on tefillin, and I'm just like, whip it on. I say, as I'm putting on, I'm like, I don't understand exactly what I'm doing as I'm rolling it over my arm, but I'm doing this because, God, you want me to do it, and this is my way of connecting to you because I want to have a relationship with you. It's a whole different story than just doing it because it's just a mitzvah. You know, it's which is actually part of the reason. Mitzvah comes from the word connection. Tzatz v'chibur.
So somebody just said something that I would love to address that. It sounds like we're weak, like we need it for a crutch.
The biggest mistake that we made as a society is to glorify independence, because independence at a certain extent, at a certain point, is lonely. And yes, we are. I mean, you'll see this everywhere. Look up Sue Johnson. Look up I don't know, all these people. We just did a learning thing. Me and my wife and I. We listened to this podcast by Alanis Morissette. You just look up the podcast and you'll see one of them is on Sue Johnson. And we are humans who need each other. We were created in a way where we need each other. You know, babies, they did these horrific experiments with babies where they would give them everything they need, food, shelter, everything, sleep, but they didn't have any human connection, and they ended up dying, unfortunately. It's a horrific experiment, but that is what happens when we are on our own. Are we weak? I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think our nature is that we need each other. And when we try to do it on our own, we fail. I
think I think that we've adopted a culture that's not inherently Jewish for years now, and we need to get back to it, because when we look through the Torah and we look at the way that I could talk about this for hours. Maybe I shouldn't get into my whole.
All right, I don't want to run out of time. Also.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say anything, but I think it's like a counterintuitive approach, and that is really not like. It's actually, we're extra strong when we're connecting, and when we're able to, like, when you read Pirkei Avos and you talk about Ezehu Gibor Hakovish, like when we're able to gain ourselves back, we're strong. We're not weak.
Yeah.
Right. So
I actually want to. Can I just quickly address this question down here? I said that nowadays we need it. Yes, nowadays we need to be constantly told that God loves us no matter what, because what that does is, I'm going to do my best to explain this, what that does is reveals that there is a part in us that is good. There's a part of God in us that is good no matter what, unconditional. And that actually in itself is what connects us with others through this, that in the Tanya, Perek Lamed Beis, it talks about how do we can never really have any real oneness unless we value the soul more than we value the body. So through this, that we value the soul, not only do we able to get like a healthy relationship with God, but that's really the only way that we could bond as a human, as people. A real bond that is never going to be severed. Right? Do you understand?
So yeah, so this person is asking again, like our grandparents were stronger people, but like I mean, strong is relative. Like I mean, our ancestors were slaves in Egypt, right? Like they were beaten and they
Yeah.
survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're strong, but does that mean that we didn't really show our strength until we left there and we became a people and we
Yeah,
became
also tons of Jews wanted to stay in Egypt. Well, let's not go there for a second, but yeah, let's
just because
just
you
talk
could get
about now.
beaten
Let's just
doesn't
talk
mean
about
you're strong.
let's just talk about the Holocaust. They had to be strong. They had to literally be strong and use their own mental capacity. Read The Choice. That's one of the only a handful of books that I've read in my lifetime. But she talks about how the one thing that kept her alive throughout the whole concentration camp and the whole process of the Holocaust ended up, almost killing her out after the Holocaust because she was using the same tools. So yes, back then it may have been something that's strong, but when we're living in a free world, we can't use those same tools. We can't use the independence. We're thinking about our emotions too often. We're thinking about our existence here in the world. We have the luxury. I think I mentioned that, a little while back. But I hope that addresses the question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Soul on Fire says, and having a healthy relationship with oneself.
Yes.
And Hannah I says, our grandparents were fighting for basic physiological needs. We are in a different galus, a more spiritual galus.
Yes, I agree 100%. 100%. We have our food, we have our shelter, but now there's this whole other section, as Hannah was teaching me not too long ago, there's a whole other section of our brain after we have our basic needs, which is the emotional needs. Now that our basic needs, all of a sudden we have this whole emptiness. Like, oh my gosh, I have so many emotional needs. And on one hand, we're told men don't cry, don't share your emotions, or don't say that you have a problem or you won't get a shidduch. That's a big problem. That's why things like this are really, really important. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is the Gullus, and we're bringing Mashiach. We're bringing the Gula through doing things like this.
Oh, if you haven't watched the Dr. Rosmarin on dating with a mental illness, and you should. I'm just bringing it up because you brought that up, but it's saved on our YouTube channel. It was outstanding, and I feel like it could totally shift the culture of the dating world. How can we, the kind bar, how can we decide how to treat Hashem according to what our feelings are?
I don't fully get the question. That's the truth.
I don't either.
How do we respond to the way Hashem does things in our lives? I think that's what the question is. And if that is the question, oh man, it's a really long answer, but I'm just going to tell you, for me, I have to go through like a very logical way of looking at these things. There are certain things that work for me, and there are certain things that don't work. I have to believe in God, otherwise I have no hope. And like, it's literally, for me, it's black and white. If I don't have a belief in God, I die. I could explain to you how that happens, but that's what I need it. I see people who struggle with a lot of the similar things I do, and they don't believe in God, and they struggle so much more. And because I believe in God, I'm able to go through things more. Mm-hmm. And how do I believe in God is also, it's a whole, I work on a relationship just like I would work on any relationship. I have to talk to him. I have to say hi. I start off by saying, hey, I don't know if you're out there, but I was told by other people that when they prayed to God and they believe in God, it worked for them. So I'm here praying to you, even though I don't know if you're listening, I don't know if you're there, but I'm just doing it because it worked for others. So let me just try to do it. And I did it. And then slowly but surely, I realized, oh my gosh, like that thing that I was praying for is working, So it's a very practical thing. And even if you don't
get what you want, you get what you need.
Yeah, that's for sure. It gets me out of it. So I'll give you an example of at a certain point, I was praying every morning to Hashem, look, I'm smoking cigarettes. And every morning I'm praying, God, please free me from my addiction of cigarette smoking. Okay? In addition to anything else I was doing, that was something I was doing. And then at a certain point, I realized, oh, a second, I don't really, really want to quit. if I'm being truly honest. But I do want to quit. So I started davening, Hashem, please help me honestly pray to you that I really want to quit smoking. So I don't know if that's the reason why I quit smoking, but at the end of the day, if the main thing is the relationship and maintaining a relationship, and through the relationship, they're just like any relationship, through you understand and you trust the person, you have experience, you have enough experience to know that when we do certain things, something's going to happen. The difference, one person described the difference between belief and trust is like a person moves into a new neighborhood and his car breaks down and he goes to his neighbor and he says, do you know a mechanic? And the guy says, yeah, sure, go to Mike the mechanic right around the corner. He's really good. So he believes that the mechanic is going to help him, right? So then he goes to the mechanic and the guy helps him, and then it happens twice, 3 times. At a certain point, he has a trust. He has already experience and he knows that it's going to work. So that was my experience about it. Period.
Chaya Berghoff Photography says that belief wasn't based off of your feelings, though, so you need both the logic and the illogical part. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, I guess I hope I fully understand it, but I think that goes the other way as well. Like the whole teshuvah and the God loves me no matter what balance, right? So once I have a foundation of God loves me no matter what, and it's not logical, or I believe in God even though it doesn't make any sense. But then on the other hand, I also have, enough experience to know that it works. It works to believe that God loves me no matter what, which is not really logical. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but
yeah.
So I think I want to try to get to as many questions as we can. Okay, so I'm gonna skip and then go back because the person who asked it before also asked it again. Is a self-harm addiction similar? And what would you say if that was the case? That would it follow the same types of treatments? And what kind of treatments would you recommend for that?
Yeah, if somebody's self-harming, I highly recommend that you go see a professional and open up about it. It's very common. There's no judgment there. But what I could say is that everything about all of these behaviors and numbing and self-harm is, I actually wrote a post about it. I highly recommend that you go check it out. It's like a orangey picture, and you'll see like me with like a little bit of eyeshadow or eye makeup. It's from me on Purim. And what I described there is that the only way I would want to do something, a behavior that's going to harm me, is because it's more painful not to do it. It's more painful to sit in the feelings and the emotions and in the shame and in the guilt or the the internal pain is way greater than any consequences that will happen through my behavior or drug or self-harm. So I have to do it as self-medicating. So from that perspective, I see it as being the same thing. It's just another way of self-medicating and help me deal with my pain. And ultimately, the solution is also very similar. Number one, knowing that you're not alone, speaking with other people who have gone through the same thing and getting that unconditional support. And then trying to see, where's my pain coming from? That's where all the therapy work comes, I don't even necessarily have to go back there, but you have to be able to heal that pain. I was just telling somebody, if somebody broke their foot and they come to a doctor and they only tell them to change their diet, 6 months later, they're still going to have a broken foot. So that's why you'll hear a lot of us talk about a lot of the very relevant mental health professionals will mention different trauma. They'll talk a lot about trauma. So if we're not dealing with the trauma, we're just dealing with the symptom.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of really good videos on that too. Esther Goldstein and Bruchi Moskowitz both relatively recently, we have recordings on trauma as a root of mental illness.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to hear about that, they could go to our YouTube channel. Because I think I don't have a clock and I can't see the time, but I just don't want to get cut off.
It's 10:16. I'm not sure what to say.
Oh gosh, we're gonna get cut off soon. So let's can you? Somebody said, could you share who helped you along the way? Therapists, treatment centers, support groups.
So started from my wife calling Katsala, my brothers showing up, my family paying for my rehab. Going to the psych ward was Cornell in Westchester. I ended up going to rehab in Caron, Pennsylvania, and Caron, 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 Pennsylvania. And then I went to the Safe Foundation or Safe Haven for outpatient. My therapist currently, I'm not sure if he's going to want me to say, but if you need my therapist's name, just, I guess, DM me and I'll be happy to share it. I literally love him. He's really the best. I think I spoke a lot earlier about like what it was like when I came out of the rehab and all the support that I've had. So you can go back there to see that.
And were you involved in Amudim at all? Like, were they?
They weren't really around or at least public at that time. 7 years ago, I think they only really 6 years ago started, or even 5 years ago. Okay.
But now it's a great resource.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they're pretty overloaded, so I don't know. They already finished their fundraiser, but if anybody has a bunch of cash to give them, I think it will be helpful so that they can get more caseworkers. But there's so many others. There's Amudim, there's Project Relief, there's OHAL, there's JCW, there's Neshamas, there's so many other resources. Jewish Board of Family Services.
Yeah, you could look on our website, jproactive.com. And we have on the resources page, we have an Excel spreadsheet. You could do like a Google search if you're looking for addiction. Like not a Google search, like there's a little search thingy at the top of the spreadsheet. And if anybody has any resources to add, they could just let us know. We'll add them. We didn't put on any support groups because we have no way of verifying that they're, who's running them or whatever. Like vetting them. But public organizations, if anyone wants to, check out those resources and add to the list if they want to. It's a work in progress, the website. I'm just looking, there's like all the questions are gonna like spring. We might have to do like we might have to do another live to cover the rest of the questions, but I'm just gonna ask one last one because the rest of them, each of them on their own is like another live. So I'm just gonna ask you one final question that I think is important. So there are many opinions that once an addict, always an addict. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you what. I think the question is coming from a place of like, it's shameful to be an addict and you're screwed forever. Mm-hmm. You're never going to be normal again. I love this comment over here. Honestly, formal statistics aside, is there really a human being today that doesn't experience a mental health struggle? Like, what's normal? Who's normal? Who's a functional family? Tell me about that.
Yeah, those statistics also are outdated. Like, I bet if they redid it, it's like one or two.
So, like, if it's coming from, like, a shameful thing, like, oh, once an addict, always an addict, that's it. You're always going to have that stigma. I can't really talk to that. What I could talk to is that because I get to I love how this came naturally. Because I get to identify myself as an addict, that is really my only identification ID that will earn the trust of somebody who really needs my help. And that speaks volumes. I can't tell you the countless amount of people that I've been able to be a channel of healing through the fact that I've identified myself as an addict. Yeah, so if we're talking about like what happened as a result of me speaking publicly and saying like, hi everybody, I am an addict, I'm an alcoholic, hundreds of people have gotten help personally who have called me. And that's in addition to the fact that Neshamas is really successful and people are still calling them, and the video is out there, and the video was played in schools, and I've been asked to speak in schools, and, you know, it's a big deal.
I think that that's such an important point, because you could replace the word addict with anything else.
Yeah.
What you just said, like it gives you the connection with other people who have suffered.
Empathy.
Yeah, I mean, I know personally. I lost a full-term baby at my fourth baby. I had no idea that other people lost babies. Like, I really didn't. And all of a sudden, in my hospital room are all these women who lost babies. And they're coming and telling me their stories and connecting. And all of a sudden, we have like this whole new tribe of people who have a shared story, a shared experience, and who can support each other and build each other up.
Right.
And I think you could substitute it with literally any.
Yeah, there's a story. I think the first time they noticed it was after one of the wars. I think it was after the Vietnam, and there were a lot of patients in the hospital who had lost limbs, and they ended up being in a certain area in the hospital, and they realized that because they were in a similar place in the hospital, they ended up meeting each other in the cafeteria or something like that. And there was a lot of healing that came from just the fact they were in an environment of people who had similar painful experience. But like, I just want to answer the question, like, what do I believe about whether an addict, like, without being like all sophisticated and political? The answer is yes. There were times when
an addict, always an addict.
Yeah, just because, like, for me, for me to take a risk and say, hey, you know what, let me try drinking. I know too many people who have tried that, and some of them are dead, and some of them just told us the story of how painful the experience was. So I have yet to meet somebody who said, yeah, you know what, I took on drinking again, and everything is fine, and that story stays that way for a long period of time. I just haven't seen them. Maybe if I did, I just don't remember it. It's just too rare. So that's the real direct answer to that question.
Well, I mean, I guess it just it's if it's a mental illness like any other mental illness, then it's something that anybody that has any other mental illness has to be mindful of for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, you learn to manage it.
Illness.
Yeah, you learn to manage it.
Right,
Remission.
like a diabetic, it's, you could say it's a life sentence, or you could say it's, you manage your blood sugar, and and you learn to live with it, and this is your reality.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there was a certain point in early sobriety that I would want Mashiach to come so that I can be freed from my illness, and then I'll be able to drink again. But until then, and hopefully it's today, I'm not going to take the chance.
That would be beautiful if it was today.
Agreed. And we'll have a feast on Yom Kippur.
Amen. Let's do it.
All right. Anything else, or are we done? Are we good?
We do have a lot more questions, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to them, but I feel like we're going to get cut off. But this is amazing, and I would love to schedule a follow-up at some point, and for maybe your 8th year sober, we'll have another party.
Maybe. Please, God.
And I hope everybody has what's the context of this convo?
You'll see the live after.
All right. Well, everybody should have a safe and meaningful fast. And
where can they find this video?
They could find this video on our story until tomorrow, and if I don't mess it up, it will be on our YouTube channel after. I have messed up before. I hope I don't, but it should be on our YouTube channel within probably by the end of the week.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Mazel tov on this exciting milestone. And,
thank you.
And we have a lot to be grateful for, and thank you so much. I really appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
time.
Thank you for what you guys do, and Maksim Matova.
You too.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.